Hey, what up? This is Quinn, and we're back with another 2200 to 2400 rated chess puzzle on the only wet chess website that you know, chess.com. So, in this position, we are facing a very, very unique situation to say the least. When I first looked at this puzzle, I was like, what in the world is this? And that was about a minute ago. So, yes, we can take his rook on a1 and promote a queen, but the question is that going to be even enough to win this game? Because we have an opponent that's got 11 points of material and minor pieces left, plus the heavy piece, the rook, and he's also got 3 pawns. So just having a queen alone here is maybe not enough to even win the game. We can take here with a check, and he can take on e2, and then we can take his knight on d2, and then he can take back with his king, and then his king is now protecting this pawn. We can maybe give a check here with the queen, but his king can kind of just run around in circles around the pawn to dodge any further checks, and then eventually he's going to be able to activate his pieces and try to promote one of these kingside pawns, or try to promote his c pawn. And I think our chances there, with just one queen versus a rook and a knight and 3 pawns, is not going to be enough to win. If anything, we're the ones who are actually fighting to stay in the game. So I'm trying to look for any sort of a better move that we can make here right off the beginning. So we can also choose to take on d2 with a check first, after which he can take either pawn here. Not really seeing a huge difference between the two moves. He can take on e2, or he can take on d2. And then let's say we take with promotion here to a queen, and then he can take the other pawn that he hasn't captured, because that promotion is now also no longer with a check. Whereas if we promote here first, it's with a check. And then after he takes here, instead of taking the knight, we could even capture here on c3. And then presumably his knight would try to run away, let's say to f3. And then here we would have one pawn left over that's not captured yet, in exchange for not having taken his knight. But even in that scenario, it's kind of hard to see how we would immediately win that position. Our king is really far back here. I don't think there's anything we can do productively with the king in this situation. So really, we have two choices. We can either take the knight with our pawn, or we can take the rook with our pawn. And with taking the knight first, he can, like we said, scoop up both of those pawns immediately. That move is not without a check, the promotion move, and he can take the other pawn that we didn't capture. Whereas if we promote with the queen first, it is with a check, and then we can choose to not take the knight and keep our passed pawn, which maybe gives us a better chance of victory, because we already saw that just having the queen is most likely not going to be enough. So on that basis alone, we should probably promote first, unless there's some sort of a hidden third move that we're not even considering here. For example, just looking at something crazy, we can take here with the pawn, and then after he takes back with his king, we can, just promote this pawn. Why not? The problem is he can take back with the rook, and now this pawn is no longer promoting with a check and a capture. It's running into an empty square where his rook can just come back and take it. So that doesn't look too good either. Is there anything else that we can do to kind of like switch things up? Pawn takes the knight, king takes the e pawn. Trying to see if there's any difference between taking the e pawn and taking the d pawn. Let's think about this for a moment. Maybe no. I was looking at if there's like a check here where we can skewer the king and also this g2 square and be able to win this pawn and then take the rook on h1. But I don't think that's an option. So what I'm thinking is take here with the pawn, and then let's say he takes back with the king. We promote to a queen, and then he takes this pawn, and we give a check on b2. Then he can run to f3 and cover this g2 square with his king, preventing us from trying to win one of these pieces here on the king side. So that's not really an option for us. Is there any sort of a strange under promotion move that we can make? I'm not seeing that either. So with all of that said, pawn takes the knight still looks very tempting. I can't quite put my finger on why exactly. There's some hope element that he just doesn't want to take one of our pawns for some reason and then allow us to promote the other pawn with a check. But I don't think it's wise to play hope chess here. I think we have to assume the best possible moves by our opponent. And there is an urgency with which we have to take this rook because as soon as it moves, we won't be able to promote. It's very strange why our opponent here played c3 instead of just getting a rook in front of the pawn. That looks like a very grievous blunder. So let's go ahead and start with pawn takes the rook with a check. So that is the correct first move. And he goes king to e2, like we had expected. So here, the whole reason that we promoted with a check is to try to hold on to this pawn. So I think based on that, we should try to take on c3 instead of taking the knight. Because if we take the knight, it would just transpose to what would have happened had we taken the knight in the first move in the other variation. Although here, if we take the knight, let's take a look at this again. If we take the knight, king takes the pawn, then we give a check on b2. And here, there's a slight move order difference because had we taken with the pawn in the first move, he would have had to take on d2, and then he could take on e2, so that if we give the check, he can go to f3. But here, because we gave a check with the queen on the capture and the promotion first, he takes on e2, and then we take on d2. He takes d2. He takes the d pawn after he takes the e pawn, rather than the other way around. So then when we give the check, his king is on d2 rather than e2. And then he gets out of the way, let's say, to e3, and then we take on g2. And then we will win this rook on h1. So I think that's a pretty good plan. Let's give that a shot. So he, because of that, does not want to take this pawn, which is totally understandable. And I think in this position, we just have to take the rook on h1 and gobble up that material. We don't try to do anything fancy like promote here. He's just going to take with his rook and be perfectly fine. So let's continue this way. And that's the end of that puzzle. Okay, nice and quick one. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that solve. I didn't have time for story time today because we were able to get through that puzzle. But I did want to tell you guys that one of my friends was leaving town today. He was moving to Montana, and we had a nice dinner party for him at a Andale Cantina in Buffalo. And I ordered some fish tacos that were really delicious. One was a fried shrimp taco, and then the other one was a baked or grilled tilapia taco. One of my other friends ordered bone marrow tacos, which is like a really interesting dish. And they actually served them up just like a big piece of bone with like a scooper to eat the bone marrow on the inside of it. I tasted a little bit of the bone marrow, and it actually tasted about what I expected. I've chewed into bone before. It kind of tastes like a mix between just eating straight up bone and eating fat. And I guess it's pretty good for you because it contains a lot of the nutrients that are required for the bone to grow. But that could just be me spitting pseudoscience at you guys. Uh, One of my other friends ordered the enchilada. One of them got the Tex-Mex, which is a very cheesy dish. He's also a little bit lactose intolerant, so I don't know if he took a lactate or not, but if he didn't, he's probably farting up a storm right now at home while playing video games. So if you're watching out there, buddy, I'll wish him the best for you. He does follow my Instagram, so there's a good chance that he could check out my YouTube videos as well. But yeah, it was a bittersweet moment. You know, the restaurant was really good, the food was really good, but we had to say goodbye to our friend who is moving to a smaller town. Buffalo already a pretty small town. It's only got 200,000 people. And Montana doesn't have too many big towns. It's one of the lowest population states for anyone who's watching, not in the U.S. It's a really big state by land area, but in terms of the number of people who live there, it's not very large. I actually don't even know if Montana has over 1 million people. It's I'm gonna guess 4 million. 1.14 million total people in the state of Montana, which is kind of like what New York State would be if we didn't have New York City. So, who am I to talk? But, anyways, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. And if you did, go ahead and give it a like. And I'll see you guys tomorrow.